It's been around for over 2,000 years. It has become very popular, though, in Western countries like the United States in the past 20 years or so. Here we go. There is an old Chinese farmer whose only horse disappears. He's run away. His neighbors tell him he has bad luck, but all he says is maybe. The horse comes back one day and brings several wild horses with him. The neighbors call it good luck, and all the farmer says is maybe. His 20-year-old son decides he will tame one of the wild horses, but the mare proves too much for him. He's thrown and breaks his leg. Such bad luck, the neighbors say in sympathy. And the farmer just repeats, maybe. And soon, a local warlord comes with troops to the farmer's community. He is conscripting young men to fight in his war against another warlord. Because of his broken leg, the farmer's son is not forced to enlist in the warlord's army. The neighbors of the farmer are envious of his good luck. But again, all the farmer says is maybe. There are quite a few lessons in this tale. One is that it is easy to forget that life is a series of interconnected events. It is often difficult to know if an isolated occurrence is truly good or bad. Another lesson is that it is not good to get too attached to possible outcomes. It's better not to jump to conclusions about whether some occurrence is necessarily good or bad. In today's readings, there were two passages that made me think of this Chinese parable. The first was in the collect quote, that we love you in all things, God, and above all things, may obtain your promises which exceed all that we can desire. It was that part about the promises which exceed all that we can desire that got my attention. I was thinking about how our desires and how much time we waste striving to have things and outcomes that we believe are essential to making us happy. It's too easy to forget that God's promises do exceed all those things and outcomes that we spend so much time desiring. The other passage is in the reading from the first epistle of Peter. Always be ready to make your defense to anyone who demands from you an accounting for the hope that is in you. The author is warning his congregation, probably in Asia Minor, which is now Turkey, that the hope they feel as Christians will probably seem strange to other people. That hope of theirs would have been born of Jesus' teaching in Luke's Gospel on the lilies of the field. He tells us not to spend time worrying about our lives or what we should eat or wear. Look, he says, at the ravens and the lilies of the field. If God takes care of them, how much more will God take care of you? That is the hope that is in us, that the author of 1 Peter writes about. That is also the non-anxious, not worrying hope of the Chinese farmer, written about 1,000 years before Jesus was born. The farmer's attitude and the hopeful attitude Jesus asks us to adopt in his lilies of the valley teaching are not easy to come by. But the good news is that about 500 years ago, St. Ignatius Loyola gave us a spiritual practice that fosters this hopeful attitude. It's a practice that can help us lessen the resignation is not passivity and not passively accepting fate. It's actively seeking God in all things. For example, let's say you're interviewing for a new job and you really want it. Ignatian indifference encourages us to become unattached to a specific outcome, here, getting that job. Instead, you could welcome the possibility that not getting the job might even be better for you, even if you don't know what that might be. By doing this, you'd be practicing holy indifference, learning to distance yourself from that intense desire you have to get that job. You would learn to trust that either outcome, getting it or not getting it, would be all right. You would be fine in either case. These intense desires can occur in so many parts of our lives. Wanting someone we care for to return the affection we have for them. Wanting to have a child. Wanting that bid on a new house to be accepted. These kinds of desires can become obsessive and take over our lives. Holy indifference allows us to create a pause. We can quiet our emotional hunger and ask ourselves if all this desire is bringing us toward or away from God. True indifference allows us to align our desire with God's will for us. We begin to trust that God will give us clarity and we are able to accept either outcome. We begin to enjoy true freedom when we recognize that freedom has nothing to do with having all our wants satisfied. And how many times, in hindsight, do we realize that to have chosen a past passionate desire would have been the wrong road to take? I first practiced holy indifference when I was going through the long process of discerning whether or not I had a calling to the priesthood. I had no idea I was doing it. By the grace of God, I just fell into it. People at my church, St. Marcus and Glen Ellen, kept telling me I should think about becoming a priest. I really did not like hearing that. I had a terrific job, I made a great deal more money than I would as a priest. But as much as I tried to ignore everybody, I wondered if God was using them to get through to me. It did always seem that God had to get me upside my head in order to get me to pay attention to anything. So I talked to my rector, Matt Hunter. I told him I would be just fine if he said he didn't think I had a vocation. Well, he didn't say that. Instead, he suggested we meet once a month over the next 6 months to chat about my dilemma. 6 months later, he told me he thought we should assemble a discernment committee. 3 people from St. Barnabas and 2 from St. Andrews to help me determine if I had a calling or not. When I joined those people, I told them I would be just fine if they said they didn't think I had a vocation. We met every month for 6 months. We prayed together and they asked me a million questions. I was very surprised when they told me that they believed I should keep moving forward. The next months were filled with medical exams and testing, psychological batteries, and a conversation with a psychiatrist. I filled out endless questionnaires and had to write a pretty long autobiography. The diocese did background checks, and afterwards I was interviewed by the canon to the ordinary and the bishop. At that point, to my surprise, holy indifference had set in. All the writing, the conversations, and the tests had ironically made me more positive But that feeling was still balanced by my willingness to hear a resounding no, if that was in the cards. At this point, of course, I had no idea what holy indifference was, but I did begin to feel like I was being called. That I knew I would be okay with whatever decision the diocese would make. The last step was a discernment weekend. 13 other candidates to the priesthood and I came to a retreat house where we would have 5 two-hour conversations with 5 different people. A layperson, a deacon, a seminary professor, a psychologist, and a priest. I felt so relaxed that weekend. I really enjoyed it. I gotta say though that most of the other candidates were fantastic. And I decided that even though I was feeling much more positive about the possibility of becoming a priest, I would be fine if the 5 decided I should not go on to seminary. Well, you know the end of that story. A few years later, I read an essay on holy indifference and realized that God had given me that gift when I was discerning for the priesthood. So now, when I really want something to happen or not happen, I do my best to practice holy indifference, to detach myself and follow God's will if at all possible. I'm not always very good at it, but I do trust the process. In fact, one time, it was really well planned. In the fall of 2021, Johnny Williams and Scott Richard told me they wanted to figure out a way to hire me as your priest. Between fall of 2021 and May 16, 2022,